1 Corinthians 11:14. Does not nature itself teach you that if a man wears long hair, it is a disgrace for him? A man's got to do what a man's got to do. That's not what that passage is saying. Yes, it does. It clearly says men should not have long hair. Well, in the rest of that passage, it also says that women shouldn't shave their heads and that they should have a covering whenever they pray. And if they don't do that, that is also shameful. I don't see very many Christian women doing that these days. Yet, they're still probably loved by God the same. And if you look a little bit deeper, the passage is about Paul talking to the Corinthians, a newly found church in Greece. And the first bit of scripture is about Paul commending the Corinthians on that particular instruction he left them. I'm not saying that it's good or bad to uphold the instructions Paul has given to a specific church to your own life, but it is a tradition of man that was set for them to uphold Jesus' memory. The second part of that scripture is talking about all the bad things that the people of Corinth do, like partying at church, like drinking, getting drunk at church, putting down the poor, making factions within the church, taking the Lord's Supper without inspecting the heart. I think that was his biggest, most impactful statement within that passage of scripture. Because then he goes on and says that by taking the Lord's Supper without having a clean heart, God will judge them in their own right. So this is just an example of man-made traditions made to honor God, to help us remember about God. But sometimes a tradition can become so more important to the heart of man that they forget about God in doing it. So if you cut your hair mindlessly because everybody else does it around you and you're not putting God in it, is a tradition, is that a tradition that you put above God? Or if you don't cut your hair and remember God for it, is that a tradition man-made to remember God? I think that's the most important aspect of a tradition. Mark 7:6-13. Jesus talks about the vain worship of man keeping traditions of man over keeping God's commandments, right? And by keeping the traditions without keeping God's commandments, it is offensive to God. What are God's commandments? There's two of them. In Matthew 22:38-40, it's love the Lord with all your heart, soul, and mind. And the second one is love your neighbor as yourself. So just keep those two. And we're all square here. You know what I mean? God does not care about whether or not you have long or short hair, if you have tattoos, if you don't have any tattoos. Okay. In a certain type of way, Paul was mocking them by complimenting them on the lowest possible thing that they got right. It's like getting a 10 out of 100, right? So like your teacher sitting there grading your math homework is, oh, at least you got 2 + 2 for the instructions I gave them. Oh, good job. And then goes on to mark all the other answers as an X. So I don't have to cut my hair? Not unless you don't want to. I mean, you're cool, dude.